Well, per usual, there was a few months long hiatus in this project, the asphalt sled. Winter kind of got in the way, and yeah, we haven't done anything on it. So now we're going back through and trying to find all the loose parts that are scattered about, and start working on putting this asphalt skid back together. So I know I'm not alone in this scenario. Basically, when you've got so many things that are trapped in project purgatory, you've got stuff you need done, but there's always something else that comes up and gets priority. So it gets tossed on a shelf or, shoved to the back of the shed or the barn, sometimes never to see daylight again. So just because you see something, hanging in the rafters, it looks like it's been there for a decade, it's just waiting for the right time, waiting for the right budget, waiting for the right amount of motivation. So keep that in mind when you've got those projects out in purgatory. Don't forget about them. They're just in waiting and in a state of indecisiveness, pretty much like my shop. And just like Chuck Norris, all good projects never sleep, they just wait. So at this stage, we might as well go through and try to inventory our parts that we need for the asphalt sled. And the most crucial part of an asphalt sled is the track itself. So this track I picked up a few years ago off a friend of mine. It was a package deal of parts, as it usually is in my case, because I just can't quit buying stuff, so the more the merrier. So we got this. We got a couple of lightweight chrome moly trailing arms for Polaris chassis. I got some skis, a couple of the little bits and odds and ends, and the track. Now if you look, this is a 10.5 or 11 inch asphalt track. It's the narrow one. So that means a lot more work as far as trying to make a suspension work in this. Generally you would just go out and drop $1,500 on a wall suspension, but we're not going to do that because that ain't my style. So we're going to convert an original suspension to run this narrow track. Now even though that's a bit of a hassle converting the suspension over to this narrow track, the narrow tracks are much better for higher speeds and quicker times. A lot less rotating mass, and I don't know if they hook up better or what, but any of the serious guys all use these style tracks. Now this track really doesn't have that many runs on it at all. You can see it just has a little bit of wear where the bars are, but the little indicator holes there, it's still got plenty of life left in it. However, it is a bit of an older track, and you'll see that there's some checking and stuff going on. I don't think this is going to really affect anything strength-wise, since your strength's down in the cording in the back, and this is the soft rubber compound on the outside of the track. So we may try to soak it down in WD-40 or something to keep it soft and preserved. I can't remember exactly what they said to use on these. Come to think of it, I believe that's a 121 inch track. I should really double check that, because if it's not, we're kind of screwed. So we pretty much have things covered as far as skis go. Those are the skis that actually came with the package deal on the track, and they're not in bad shape. One of them's got a dent in the front hoop, and I think one or two of the wheels is kind of going bad. But they're your basic IFS style asphalt ski. They've got the polyurethane wheels on them that have the bearings molded into them, so you can't just take the bearings out and replace them, which kind of sucks. And these type of wheels are not cheap to buy. Hey, that's a Polaris, not an Arctic Cat. And here's the second set of asphalt skis that I picked up. Now I was out at swap meet last year, and got to do your early runs to try and pick up those deals. And ran across these. I think I got them for 50 bucks. Now, the thing about them is they're like the identical style to what I've got. These ones are not mint either, but definitely not bad. I think, yeah, that wheel's shot, and I think a bearing in the other one's going out. So between the two sets of skis, I'm hoping to have, you know, 4 decent wheels for now to at least get me started. We're going to end up having to buy those wheels eventually, since I guess it's kind of a wear item, so never going to get around that, but hopefully, you know, get us a few passes just for testing purposes. This must always happen during loading these things onto the trailer. Yeah, not like a regular sled where you can just drive it up there. Now, the guy that I bought the suspension off of originally, you know, a long time ago, he had a set of regular snow skis that was converted over to asphalt skis, and I'm pretty sure he just had like 2 regular track idler wheels at the front and at the back, so there was like 4 total, and there was just holes chopped in the bottom of the skis. I mean, I'm kind of all for that. I like that style, but even for me, that looked a little bit sketchy as far as the overall strength of the skis and stuff. I mean, the skis aren't necessarily meant to have a loading point that far away from them. I mean, they're going to bow or, you know, do something weird. So, I mean, if you can get a deal on a set of skis like this, that's probably the way to go. Or heck, I mean, you could make these out of steel, a little bit thinner material, and still have the same amount of strength. They'd still be a little bit heavier, but you could totally make something like this yourself out of some plate. So if I didn't pick a good deal up on these type of things, I'd have been making my own. Yeah, it's one thing if you're using those wheeled skis as just turf skis or something, but going down the drag strip at 100, that's pushing it. And speaking of pushing it, I was talking to somebody, I believe it was at the same swap meet, about asphalt racing in general, and a good point that came up that I really didn't even think about was he was saying that most of the wear on your asphalt track occurs on the return lanes. So driving around through the pits and actually, I guess, running down that return lane, the rough pavement or whatever, actually, you know, I guess wears away at the track, which makes sense. I mean, yeah, you may be burning some track off doing a burnout and stuff, but every time you go a quarter mile down, well, more than a quarter with the shutdown, and then drive the whole way back, you're wearing it out. So I guess you see a lot of the big time guys putting a little dolly or some wheeled thing underneath the track, so that way they can actually push them around without constantly having the track rolling on the ground, tearing it up. Because those tracks are not cheap, and you know, I don't know, I think they're around $600 or $700 for one of them now. Whew. And there we have the rest of the hardware for the suspension. Now this may look like a box full of random parts that have no order. Well, you might be right about that, but we're going to make that into something that's coherent. Most of this stuff at the bottom of the box are all the parts that we scavenged off that used asphalt suspension that had the cracked rail. So we're going to be using that for the main, you know, rolling surfaces. And in addition to that, along the way in swap meet finds, we picked up some aluminum idler wheels. They might need the bearings changed in them. And I got this contraption here. Now I think I had to go back for this because I didn't buy it on the first round. And it looks expensive. This is one solid piece of aluminum that was machined out to a set of wheels basically. Now don't worry, I didn't pay a whole lot for it. And I think maybe this might be the ticket to bolt this onto one of those suspension rails in the back and use this as the top rollover for where the track comes back around the idlers and up and over. You need some type of a roller there, idler wheel set up. Not sure if I'm going to use regular idler wheels. Heck, you might be able to use, you know, some of the stock ones, or maybe something specialized like that. But it's nice having options, so that's why you keep buying more stuff. Oh yeah, we also have a Fox short travel suspension coilover shock here. That might actually work out alright, replacing the torsion springs in there, you know, the torsion coil springs, and try and replace the regular shock with this. So it'll be all in one, your suspension force and your dampening from the shock. It would be great to do this just to simplify the suspension. I don't know if this spring, though, is going to have enough force to really hold the suspension up. Although you don't really need a whole lot on asphalt sleds from what I've seen. You basically crank these things down until you have like 1 inch of travel. And, you know, that's it. So, if we could get this to work, that'd be sweet. And there's some handlebar parts in here, which I don't know why. Well, since we're here, and since the box was falling apart, we might as well run down the inventory of what was in there. So there's that Fox shot, like we talked about. And there's a stock front suspension shock. I believe it's stock, out of one of the Cat skids. My memory's kind of getting fuzzy at this point because, you know, you put it in there thinking that, yeah, I remember this. And like 8 months later, you're looking at it like not even remembering that you own it. So we're just basing it off of our best guesstimate at this point. There's the fancy billet aluminum money roller. And here's some cool Arctic Cat green wheels that came out of that skid. These were the front row of wheels, so I'm guessing that's where we'll put them. And next up is the bulk of your idler wheels, alternating between the thin ones in the middle and the wider ones. I think these go either in between the drive lugs on the track or just inside of them. We'll find out, I guess. So yeah, we have all of those, and these are going to be the primary supports for the whole suspension on those. And then once we get to the top of the suspension, where we have the track go up and around, we'll either use that one, maybe those, or possibly just a couple of regular idler wheels here. We've also got some random suspension cross shafts, which these look to have the good threads in them, so always good to have some of those laying around. You never want to scrap those out. Looks like a couple of rail clamps for an extra wheel, so those could always come in handy if we need to add in some, or heck, salvage those for another project. Some idler wheel spacers. Those are some rear drive shaft spacers. We're probably going to have to use some combination of existing ones and some custom ones because, you know, we actually need to move the outer wheels all the way to the inside now for that narrower asphalt track. And a whole bunch of random bolts and washers, which are good because we remember exactly where they went. So as you can tell, the suspension's been on hold for a couple of weeks by the amount of crap that has been accumulating on it. Hopefully though, you know, we work through these projects that have been stacked on top of it, because that's how the priority works. You know, the more recently and higher stacked stuff you have on there, that's the first thing to get done. So we're going to work on the skid loader, then we're going to work on that screener, and then we'll get back to the suspension. Sorry to keep you in suspense. Don't worry about those other suspensions. You'll probably never see those in other videos. We grabbed the old suspension out of the scrap pile, and we're using it as a template to get the basic dimensions of where all of the rollers and the idler wheels went on the suspension to give it a nice even distribution. Now normally it has a machine surface where the bearing rides down and stops right here. If we can get an upsized bearing that will ride over this portion of the shaft, we can use a couple of locking collars and put it on, you know, locate them right here where we need to, and I bet you that'll take care of the rollover angle that we need for that track. And there's the 900 triple engine. Look at that, it got upgraded to premium storage. Well, here's a piece of essential gear and part of the build that you don't normally think of. It's a leather jacket. Now, I don't ride bikes normally, so I don't have a leather jacket that I usually ride with. So, you know, a few years ago, before I was actually into asphalt racing, came across this at a swap meet. Ended up picking it up for 40 bucks, I think. It's actually a nice jacket. I mean, I'm not sure exactly what it cost, but I'm sure it was more than 40 bucks. So I got this jacket thinking, yeah, someday I'm going to go asphalt racing. I'm going to need one of these because it's required, so I better pick it up. Now, some people may say that that's a poor business decision. You shouldn't be buying stuff like that just because of the whim that you may do something eventually. I say, bah humbug. You get the deals. Sometimes you got to get them when they're there. And I'm glad I got it when I did, because I wouldn't want to pay full retail for this now. Now there's a couple of minor issues, like it says that it's an extra large. However, they must not have accounted for inflation, because this doesn't seem like an XL to me. Guess we gotta suck it in. We're good to go. Just don't breathe in very heavy. See, this is what you call motivation here. You know, you don't need some fancy diet plan or whatever. You just have a cheap jacket that you want to fit into and stay into. So, you know, cut out them cheeseburgers every so often.